Today we're discussing a potential blockbuster trade between the Boston Bruins and the Calgary Flames. How could it work for both sides and who might be involved? We'll discuss that possibility. Plus we have some updates on the Maple Leafs and Chris Tanev. We do have a better idea what the asking price could be for the Leafs to acquire the blue liner. Plus we have some more trade talk around the Seattle Kraken. According to Elliot Friedman, they may be looking for multiple different types of moves. We also have other news from around the league, including news from the NHL waiver wire, multiple items from the Department of Players Safety, and some other injury updates as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of news to cover today and some trade talk I want to take a look at later, including a potential blockbuster deal that might make sense for both the Flames and the Bruins. But first, we have some other news items to discuss first. And of course, earlier today, we did see a small trade between the New York Islanders and the St. Louis Blues. In case you missed that, there is another dedicated video here on the channel. But essentially, to sum things up, the Islanders have acquired veteran defenseman Robert Bortuzzo from the Blues. They have a banged up blue line, including Ryan Pulock, Adam Pelech, Sebastian Aho, all been out of action for different lengths of time, including Pulock, who just got hurt last night. They've had other defensemen from the minors up. They picked up Mike Riley on waivers. This was a small price to pay to bring in a veteran defenseman on a fairly cheap contract to kind of fill some gaps here while their guys are out getting healthy. So in the interim, this kind of helps the Islanders out. And the Blues, we've been talking for since the summer that they wanted to kind of retool their blue line a little bit. Bortuzzo likely wasn't going to be brought back to St. Louis next year on an expiring deal since he's a pending UFA. So it makes sense for both sides to kind of get something done here in the short term. We also have news from the NHL waiver wire today. Of course, we had Liam Foudy of the Nashville Predators on waivers from yesterday. We found out today that he was not picked up, so he's cleared waivers and has been reassigned to the American Hockey League team in Milwaukee. Now, as I mentioned, we also have multiple items from the Department of NHL Players Safety. New Jersey Devils defenseman Brendan Smith has been fined the maximum for what they call a dangerous trip in the collective bargaining agreement, which is $2,864.58. I really don't know how they come up with these weird numbers. Of course, they're all quite low compared to what these guys make for money. But this dangerous trip took place against the Seattle Kraken and Devon Shore of the Kraken, the forward. So ultimately, that's a second time he's been fined in the past week. And the other item from player safety is Austin Watson of the Tampa Bay Lightning's also been fined the maximum allowed for unsportsmanlike conduct, which is actually $2,022.57. Now, what happened at the end of last night's game between the Lightning and the Predators? The Lightning were losing, I believe it was 4-1. The game was well over in the final seconds of play. As the buzzer was going off to end the game, Austin Watson from the neutral zone fired a slap shot down towards the head, well, aiming it towards the Preds end, and not too far away, probably within 5-10 feet away, was defenseman Jeremy Lauzon, and the puck made good contact with Lauzon and hurt him. You can't really, I don't think you can 100% say that this was completely intentional. Watson did have his head down. Obviously, it's a frustrating loss for the Lightning. Was he just firing the puck down the other end just to kind of take some frustration out as the game ended? Perhaps. Apparently, after the game, he was contacting everybody he could and trying to get a hold of Lauzon as well to apologize, make sure they know that it wasn't his intention. Obviously, Watson, still has connections to that organization after spending a number of years there, former first-round pick. I don't know that it was one of those things that, like I said, you can completely say it was intentional, but it was almost like it was too accurate and almost too good not to be. I can see an argument from both sides. It's not really clear, but either way, even if he didn't mean to, which I think he, maybe he did, but I don't think he necessarily meant to injure anybody, that he should be more careful and shouldn't be taking slap shots with other players nearby at the end of the game like that. Just kind of unnecessary. So Watson's been fined for his actions. We did get another update. We talked about Thomas Chabot yesterday, the Senators, in yesterday's video. As I recorded that video, we didn't have the update as of yet, but last night, right before they began their game at the Toronto Maple Leafs, we did get word that Thomas Chabot is going to be out for an extended time. He's been placed on long-term injury reserve again, and this time it's going to be approximately 4 weeks, but likely longer. They're saying minimum 4 weeks. They're not really specifying anything further than a lower body injury, but they were still kind of waiting on another test. I think they want to get another opinion, so we'll see. At this point, it's, I think, pretty fair to say that he's not going to need surgery, but still looking at an extensive recovery. So either way, I mean, that's just the last time he hurt his hand. He was out for a month, was on LTIR, came back, played 2 games, and out again. So it's been a frustrating year for him, but hopefully the team can play well in his absence, and he can get back and have a healthier rest of his campaign. The Sens did lose last night to the Leafs, but they really deserved to win. They dominated the game. The chances against, shots against, were well in Ottawa's favor, but Joseph Woll certainly shut them down and was a big part of the reason why the Leafs won. Although the Leafs did lose Woll to injury late in the game with about 8-9 minutes to go. He made a save, and there was really nothing play. Like there was no contact with him from a opposing player or anything, and he just kind of went down and was in agony and couldn't get up. Hard to say exactly what it was. There's speculation it could be like a groin injury, could be maybe a knee, something popped, I don't know. But he was seen on crutches afterwards, and he had to be helped off the ice. Couldn't really put any pressure or look like on his left side. So it's difficult to say exactly what the injury is. All the Sheldon Keefe, the Leafs coach, would say is that he's definitely going to miss time. How long, they wasn't quite clear. We'll probably know within the next day or so. But certainly bad news for Woll, who had kind of taken over the net. Ilya Samsonov, between being missing a little bit of time this year due to illness, injury, and then, of course, inconsistent play. He had taken the net over and basically became the starter. So now they need Samsonov to kind of find his game and come back. Or, it could be a case where Martin Jones gets to play more, who's their number 3. And clearly that's why they brought him in case something like this happened. And obviously, they need them to hold down the fort here while Woll recovers, because he's by far been the best goalie this year. If the other goaltenders can't hold down the fort while he's gone, and it could be a bumpy road for the month of December while he recovers, assuming he's going to be out for, at least a few weeks. Hard to say exactly. We'll hopefully have more details soon. In Pittsburgh, the struggling Penguins made a variety of roster moves today. They sent down Alex Nylander and Joona Koppanen, and they recalled John Gruden, Valtteri Puustinen, and Mark Johnstone. All 3 players are in the lineup tonight for their game against the Florida Panthers. Mark Johnstone's a really good story, good perseverance and dedication. You can see 27 years old, bounced around a lot, put in his time in the minors, including when he first got to pro hockey, not long after he was cut by the ECHL team he was with. Ended up getting another opportunity with the Leafs organization, with their ECHL affiliate in Newfoundland, and then played for the Marlies. So obviously ended up in Pittsburgh because of the connection to Kyle Dubas. Dubas was obviously quite familiar with the player, gave him an opportunity, and now he's get called up for his first NHL game. So it's another great example of a player a little bit later than normal getting their NHL opportunity to make their debut, but certainly hope he makes the most of it. And we'll see what these guys can do at the NHL level. The Penguins have been struggling. The power play has been terrible, considering all the firepower they have to put out there. And their bottom 6 certainly has been inconsistent. And something that they're working on, trying to find the right mix. Hard to say how things go for them, or what other moves we might see. But at some point, you got to think something's got to give. In Pittsburgh, they also had to place Noel Acciari on injured reserve, which also created a bottom 6 hole. Max Pacioretty is getting closer to a return. The Washington Capitals will be happy to see him debut, and hopefully this time when he comes back, he'll be able to stay healthy for an extended time. Of course, last year, after recovering from a long Achilles injury, he didn't play very long and injured again. So certainly hoping that is not the case this time around. He should be able to play most likely sometime shortly after Christmas. They said he's about 2 to 3 weeks away. So I'm going to say most likely after the holiday break is probably when they will likely get him in the lineup and see where things go. They could use his scoring ability if he's able to play anything like he was used to last time he's been around the NHL. So good on that. Also, some other news from around the NHL as well. Lots of talk about lots of trades involving the Maple Leafs, especially in regards to their blue line. I know last night, obviously, where the blue line's been the big focus. A lot of people wondering about goaltending now with Joseph Woll's injury, but I think that's a little premature. They have Samsonov and Jones. I don't see the Leafs making any kind of moves in that regard, unless they would have to be more significant than that. It'd have to be like a season-ending injury, and the other guys not holding them down the fort before they'd consider a move of that regard. But it's no secret that the Leafs definitely want to improve the blue line. I know I've even heard interviews recently with Brad Treliving on Toronto radio talking about the fact that he definitely has desire to improve the blue line. The big thing that's kind of holding things up is the willingness of other teams to deal and the prices involved. Ultimately, Darren Dreger of TSN is reporting that the likely asking price for Chris Tanev, which appears to be their prime target out of Calgary, is at least a second-round pick. The Maple Leafs are low on draft currency, something they would have to go out a little while, like a couple of years out, to trade in a future pick. The Flames, there's some talk that Calgary might see about taking one last stab at trying to sign him. No clear, real definitive answer that they are in a hurry to do that. They want to take their time with this. The Flames are not really going to know for sure until later in the year that they're kind of, not in a playoff spot, so to speak. Like, as long as they're in it, you don't think they necessarily want to move everybody, but as the team goes on and the season goes on, if the team makes improvements and has a chance to get in the playoffs, I guess the team maybe has some hope that maybe some of these pending UFAs may decide that, they'd like to re-sign and stay after all. Hopefully that Tanev would be one of those players with a change of heart. So at this point, though, it does seem more likely that he is dealt. There's also some rumors out there that the Flames weren't real eager to deal with their former GM and Brad Treliving with the Leafs, and from what we've seen, and according to Brad Treliving, he didn't think that was necessarily the case. He said the Flames are going to be out there to get the best deal they can and to try to move forward with that. So it doesn't really matter who that is. It's who gives them the best offer. So at the end of the day, they also had, reporters think that there's confidence in the Leafs that they could sign Tanev to stay, considering he's from that area and would be another kind of homecoming type of player, which they seem to be fond of doing here over the last number of years. So we'll see. Of course, the prices are high. Some of these guys are pretty good. I've seen some people saying, including Darren Dreger, that a defenseman like Sean Walker in Philadelphia, if he's moved, that he would command a first-round pick, and that it's mind-boggling to me why you would want to pay prices that high. When the asking prices are that high, deals don't happen, and over time, the buyers will just wait them out. They won't be willing to pay that, and then you'll see prices come down ahead of the deadline and get more activity. So we'll see. That just seems a little bit crazy in that regard. Elliot Friedman had lots to say about the Seattle Kraken on most recent 32 Thoughts podcast this morning, as well as on the Jeff Merrick show, talking about how he thinks Ron Francis, the GM of the Kraken, could be secretly working on a major move. Obviously, the Kraken have a couple of issues. One, we've talked about their inconsistent goaltending, but the team really has had struggles scoring, and he feels that there's a good chance that Ron Francis would be trying to pull off a trade to acquire a top scorer. However, that's easier said than done. When teams have these players that score lots of goals, they don't exactly tend to want to trade them unless you can find a player who has a history of scoring and might be needing a change of scenery, might be needing a new contract, or for whatever reason that player could be available. But if somebody who's hot right now, leading, with a high number of goals, factor them for to be traded, probably unlikely gonna happen, right? So at the end of the day, they don't really have a lot of star power with the Kraken lineup. I mean, Matty Beniers still has a lot of potential. He's still very young, still has that potential to be a big star in the NHL. But, even looking at a guy like Jared McCann, as much as he had a 40-goal season last year, a lot of people wouldn't put McCann in the top 30, 35, 40 players in the NHL. There's still lots of players that can score, have a more history of scoring that could help this team. Like last year, the one thing I said about the Kraken was it's just one of those cases. I'm not saying they made a lot of improvements, but they had everything possible go right. You had that many players having like a career high, or shooting at the shooting percentages that they were last year. The ability to keep up with that this year and to duplicate that season again was going to be incredibly difficult. So I thought it was very, very likely that this team take a step back this year, which is exactly what's happened. The goaltending is still as inconsistent as ever. Last year, the Kraken were one of the top scoring teams in the league. So they scored their way out of trouble and into more victories, even though the goaltending wasn't, near the top of the league. So now that they're not getting that, they're not winning nearly as many games. It's quite simple. So could Ron Francis be working on a big deal to find another top scorer to join the Kraken? It's certainly possible. Not going to be easy. And it's not like they're exactly, super deep with when it comes to prospects and draft currency that, they've only been around a couple of years, and they certainly don't want to empty the cupboards for the few good prospects that they still have up and coming within the organization as well. Elliot Friedman also made mention Winnipeg Jets defenseman Logan Stanley appears to be getting some attention and getting to the point of being made available by the Jets. It's believed that the Jets at the very least have kind of put some feelers out there to determine his trade value and kind of explored the market with him right now. Obviously, Stanley's got huge size, but the way things have been going in Winnipeg, you can look at their lineup and it sounds like they kind of are willing to move him for the right price tag. So we will see where that goes. Obviously, defensemen come at a premium in this league. They are the hot topic for most of the trade rumors going around. And certainly, somebody with his size, just like you saw with Zadorov, bound to get some attention for somebody wanting to add a little bit of snarl and as Brad Trulevin calls it, some snot on the back end. So we'll see if Stanley is moved at some point in the next little while by the Winnipeg Jets. Now, as I mentioned, could we see the Flames and the Bruins connect on what could be a significant blockbuster deal? I know there's been a lot of talk lately about the Flames players. All the NHL reporters, including TSN from Insider Trading, you've got dailyfaceoff.com, The Athletic, they're all starting to put together, now that we're far enough in the season, their top trade bait boards. And pretty much sitting right at the top of all of them are the pending UFAs for the Calgary Flames, including Chris Tanev, who we just talked about, Noah Hanifin, and Elias Lindholm. Of course, Zadorov already moved to the Vancouver Canucks just a short time ago. Now, with Zadorov already off the market, Tanev being linked to the Leafs, as well as others, they're not the only team by any means getting attention on or interested in Tanev. But when it comes to Lindholm and Hanifin, the main team mentioned is the Bruins. Now, the Boston Bruins are having a phenomenal season again, expected to be near the top or at the top of the Eastern Conference when it's all said and done once again, just like they were last year. Not quite to those historic levels, but still a really good team. Obviously, they had a phenomenal start. They have kind of come back down to earth a little bit, but still, they're well positioned to be a top, strong team in the Eastern Conference yet again. Now, of course, a couple of things, though, that they're certainly, I think, were, as much as they're getting the job done with what they have, I think it's fair to say to go into a playoff series, they would love to be able to improve their depth at center, and they would like to add another defenseman. Now, there's a lot of talk about Hanifin wanting to be a Bruin. The Bruins have been lusting after Hanifin since he's been drafted. Lindholm, to me, I said it for the last probably 4, 5, 6 months, would be the perfect guy to come into that Bruins lineup based on what's out there for potential centerman to be your next version of Patrice Bergeron. Patrice Bergeron was a very special player. You can't replace him 100%, but based on what you could look around the NHL and find that might be available, Lindholm's probably your best option out there. He doesn't make a ton of money, making under $5 million right now, and yes, he's going to want a fairly significant raise on an extension, but you mix him in the top 6, you put him with like a guy like David Pastrnak, and I think that could be dynamite together. Now, Hanifin's just going to add that much more of another offensive, top skating element on that back end, who already have Hampus Lindholm. They've already got Charlie McAvoy. They've already got Brandon Carlo. Like, that could really, really set yourself up with a really phenomenal top 4 blue line back there. Of course, you're going to have to part with somebody, and there has been long speculation that Matt Grzelcyk at some point is going to become a trade piece for the Bruins. And according to Boston Hockey Now and Jimmy Murphy, who's looking at this type of deal, saying essentially the Bruins don't have a lot to offer when it comes to futures, when it comes to making these kind of trades. The only chance they would really have to pull off a deal like this to get a significant roster player would be to have roster guys go out towards the other team. So like the Calgary Flames, when you saw them trade Matthew Tkachuk, obviously they brought in Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar. This could be a similar type of deal where they trade guys that are unsigned and bring in players that have term and could be part of the solution there in Calgary for the next little while. Certainly not just futures, but you know, do they want to rebuild in Calgary? A little bit, but to be honest, they have a fair bit of youth already there that have been stepping up and making a difference. You've seen Connor Zary have a phenomenal campaign. They still have Matt Coronado, who's looking like a real solid young prospect. They still have, Walker Door. They've got Pospisil. Like a lot of these young players have been coming up and contributing and playing well. So it's not that you couldn't have enough more young players, but you need some good, solid veteran players who can help today as well. So if you're not going to be able to re-sign these guys and they want to move and you can get back existing experienced players, it might be a decent way to go in terms of a trade. Now, it's obviously going to boil down to what other teams offer. Obviously, the Bruins are going to be a little bit unique in that sense that unless they're trading off their roster, I mean, they could include other things. They do have some, like maybe do they include like a younger defenseman like an Ian Mitchell, who's probably not going to have much opportunity if they get Hanifin. Look at the top four they'd have there. Maybe a guy like Fabian Lysell, still a younger prospect that maybe isn't quite as high in their stock as he once was, but still somebody who could be a player down the road. Do they include a Johnny Beecher or a player of that nature? Hard to say because there is some youth there in Boston that could possibly be included in this trade to make things a little bit more interesting. But if the Bruins really want to make a splash, the Calgary Flames appear to be the perfect dance partner to make that happen. They've got connections to these two top players, and it seems like, at least in the case of Hanifin, and that's his preferred place to go anyways. So I think eventually he's going to get there, just a matter of how it all goes down. So could a Flames and Bruins blockbuster trade help both clubs for the short and long term here? Let me know your thoughts on the possibilities down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.